also known as Sunnyhill. Our mission here is to create a just and more compassionate community within and beyond our walls. My name is Bradley Thomas. I serve as a worship associate for this congregation. If you're a newcomer, please visit the welcome table in the fellowship hall, where you can find out more information about Sunnyhill and sign up to receive the Beat, which is our weekly email newsletter. Also, if you'd like to be greeted as a newcomer, please grab one of those red mugs, and that way we know you're one of the newcomers, and we can warmly greet you. A gentle reminder to everyone, if you have cell phones or other noise-making devices, please silence them now, so our time together will not be disrupted by buzzing or ringing. Also, if you have a restless infant or toddler with you today and need to take a break outside the sanctuary, we have an infant care room that's accessible from the main hall and still can see and hear the service from that little room. And I'd like to take a moment to do our board minute. Each month, during the service, a member of Sunnyhill Board of Trustees presents a board minute to update the congregation about the work of the board. Today's board minute will be presented by Sarah York. Please welcome.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sarah Yord. I serve as secretary of the board right now, and the board has recently authorized the formation of a capital campaign exploratory team. This team has been asked to study and make recommendations on the feasibility, timing, scale, and structure of a new capital campaign to pay down debt and improve our facilities. Just to look into the history, when we built this beautiful building here, we used to all be crammed into that fellowship hall, and the members, we did an exploratory for a capital campaign, and the experts told us we could raise $750,000, and we raised $1.3 million. And so we built this beautiful building. Right now we have $500,000 that we're in debt to members who gave us loans at a low interest, and we have to pay them back. And we have $750,000 in loans to the bank. So we pay $90,000 a year in debt service. So we'd like to get a capital campaign to pay that down so that we don't have that debt service, so that we can use it. This is a heavy burden to us in our operating budget for each year, and keeps us from expanding programming and staff. We'd like to continue to grow, but that's put increased demands on our existing space. This growth is a good problem to have, as it indicates more and more people are interested in joining us in our mission to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. But our current facilities lack adequate classroom and meeting space relative to the size of our congregation, especially the religious education programs for children and youth, which now has over 120 registered participants. We understand that many people made a major gift last time and may not be able to do so quite so soon, but when we start the capital campaign, we would ask you to give what you can, how much you can, or whether you give, it's entirely up to you. More than half of our congregation was not here when we did the previous capital campaign, and so we're hoping that you'll be an increased pool of donors for us. So please stay tuned for more details from the board as we explore this option. Thank you.
Quite a difference there. By the way, it looks like we've still got some empty seats and people standing in the back. If you've got an open seat next to you, if you could raise your hand, let people know that there's options to move forward. Now I'd like to share with you our opening words. They were written by Eileen Carpelius. Out of our separate lives, we come to walk this path together for an hour, or a day, or a week, or a month, or a series of months and years. For this space of time, we travel together, making much or little, or nothing at all of the fact that others walk beside us. We can keep our eyes cast down, protecting ourselves from the pain we risk whenever we allow another human being to touch us, living safe little lives inside our sterile wrappings. Or we can reach out, risking a little or a lot, because we believe that loving and being loved is the only game in town. The choice is ours. Those who risk much lose much, but they are also the only ones who ever win. Please join me in saying the words for lighting our chalice. We kindle this flame to affirm that love triumphs over fear. Playing the game is more important than winning. That whatever the outcome may be, we're all in this together.
Please rise and bow your spirit for our opening hymn. Here we have gathered.
It's time for our story. If there are any children who'd like to come forward for the story, please come up now. We've still got room in the front here for anybody that wants to come up. That would be great. Yeah, so how many of you ever played t-ball? Do you know what it is? I think a few of you might. Sort of like that. It's like baseball, except you have the ball on a tee and you hit it. And it's what you do to get ready to play baseball or softball. And this, you do know, I thought you knew. So this is a story about a girl named Tracy who was on a t-ball team. And she enjoyed it even though she really wasn't very good. Sometimes she would miss the ball altogether, or sometimes she would hit it off the tee, but it would only dribble a few feet in front of her and not go very far. But it was still fun to be outside, and people still cheered for her because mostly they were playing the game just to have fun anyway. Well, on the very last game of the season, Tracy came up to bat, and by some accident, she hit the ball, and she hit it really hard. And it was just like smoking through the infield. It was going in between the legs of all 17 of the children that were playing infield that day. And it kept going into the outfield. And that had never happened before for Tracy. And she just stood there at home plate, watching the ball go and go and go, until her coach finally yelled at her, "Run, Tracy, run!" And then she remembered, oh, that's right, I'm supposed to run around the bases. And so she took off for first base. She got to first base, and her parents were up now screaming at her, "Run, Tracy, run!" And she went around first base, headed to second, and it was only about then that the children playing in the outfield got to the ball. And there were 7 of them out there, and they were kind of passing it back and forth between each other, but slowly trying to get the ball into the infield. Well, Tracy rounded around second base and was on her way to third, and by this time, everybody in the bleachers on both sides, they were on their feet, and they were cheering for her, and they said, "Run, Tracy, run!" And she was just about to get to third base when she saw this dog. It was a beautiful 12-year-old yellow lab that she knew because it was there every week when they played. And it was just a few feet beyond third base. It had gotten woken up by all the screaming. And as Tracy headed for third base, the dog looked at her and started wagging its tail. Now, Tracy was a girl who loved dogs, and it was really hard for her to pass by without petting or hugging a dog. So as she went to third base, she had a decision to make. She could either go ahead toward home and score a run, or she could stop and give that dog a hug. You know what? She decided to give the dog a hug. She stopped running the bases, and everybody fell silent, everyone who had been cheering, and just couldn't believe what they were seeing for a minute. But then after they got after the shot, everyone started clapping again, because Tracy had done what she loved. She loved the dog, and she wanted to pet it rather than scoring a run. Now, I think the thing for us to remember is that sometimes it's important to play the game to win, and sometimes it's important to play the game just to play the game. And in the end, you really have to do what you love anyway. And with that, we will sing you out to your Army classes. With
Green, and I'm a member of the pastoral care team whose task it is to reach out to members of Sunnyhill going through difficult life events, whatever they may be, offering the loving presence that binds our community together. If you want to get in touch with us, you may contact us directly or call the office or send an email to pastoralcare@sunnyhill.org. Each week at this time in the service, we share joys and sorrows submitted by members of the congregation. We share the things that we are celebrating as well as the things that we are mourning so that they need not be held alone. Joys and sorrows may be submitted online from our website or handwritten and submitted at the welcome table in the fellowship hall. After each joy or sorrow that I read, please respond by saying, "We hold you in our hearts." I have a sorrow from Judy Spiegel. Having arrived in San Miguel Allende February 1st for the winter, I never expected my healthy husband Jeff to have a stroke on February 8th. Yet another reminder that each day is a gift that we need to make the most of. He has hopefully been stabilized after 3 days in the local hospital, and we will be making our way back to Pittsburgh this coming Tuesday for follow-up and more evaluation. Our hope is to be able to return to Mexico after we are reassured that he has received the best possible care. How comforting to know that this caring congregation will be sending peaceful energy and healing thoughts in our direction. Thank you, one and all. To Judy and Jeff, we hold you in our hearts. I have a sorrow from Chris Fleischer. After 2 months of slow but steady recovery from a herniated disc, Valerie had a significant setback and has been hospitalized since Thursday. We are now told that she will likely need surgery. Chris and the kids have been managing just fine, although as anyone who has met Evelyn can attest, Chris has had his work cut out for him. We'd appreciate it if everyone would keep us in their thoughts and send good vibes our way as we hope for Val's speedy recovery. With luck, we'll see you back at Sunnyhill soon. To Chris, Valerie, and their family, we hold you in our hearts. This is a sorrow from Margaret Hampstead. Emily Marlier died this week in Morgantown, West Virginia. She was a past member of this church, a builder of a straw bale house on Cheat Lake, and a dear friend. She will be sadly missed. To Margaret and Emily and her family, we hold you in our hearts. I have a joy from Michelle Rieger. 6 years ago, I brought a 2.5-pound baby into this world. Today, she is a happy and smart 6-year-old. Happy birthday, Sadie Luna. To Michelle and Sadie and their family, we hold you in our hearts. I have a joy from Aaron Russell Story. Thank you for all the well wishes for my husband, Dan Story. The surgery went well and he is recovering quickly. To Aaron and Dan, we hold you in our hearts. And I have a joy from Susan McCarthy and Jamie Cummings. Our daughter Sarah and our grandson Bennett are here today visiting from Ohio. If you say hi and wave to Bennett, he may wave back because that is what 15-year-olds do. To Susan and Jamie and their family, we hold you in our hearts. Let us take a moment of silence to bear in mind these joys and sorrows, as well as those that are held too closely to be shared. All we have carried through the seasons of our lives has brought us here to this place made sacred by our coming together. May we hold all that we carry in the warm embrace of this loving community.
Please join me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. We come here each week seeking something. Young and old, newcomer and longtime member, believer and disbeliever, ill and healthy, partnered and single, celebrating and mourning, struggling and thriving. We come seeking, if not a cure, at least some kind of remedy for whatever is missing or missed, for whatever seems always just beyond our grasp, for whatever sits heavily on our mind or troubles our spirit. We come seeking things we cannot find on our own, ways of coping, ways of looking at things, ways of being that lighten our burdens and illuminate new possibilities. Remarkably, perhaps amazingly, sometimes we find these things here. Maybe not every week or every hour, but now and then we find what we need here. Let us take a moment of silence to consider those things we seek and those things we find here in each other's presence. In this place of both great beauty and purposeful unrest, in this place of solace and disruption, in this home that love made, may we continue to seek and to find, to reach out and to be held, to fall and to catch the fallen, to dream and to waken from dreaming. May we love one another, and may we carry this love into the world each week, each day, each hour, each moment, now and always. Amen. A week ago, last night, I found myself feeling sad, frustrated, profoundly disappointed, and utterly exhausted. My heart had been pumping hard, and I'd been on an absolute roller coaster of emotions for a couple of hours, moving from a sense of hope and impending triumph to, in the end, a sense of irredeemable loss and despair. But I reminded myself that tomorrow was another day and that I needed to regroup and get some rest. So I watched a mindless TV sitcom episode to wind down, took a few deep breaths, and then went to bed. What was it that had precipitated this state of spiritual and psychological consternation in me? Well, it was a basketball game. Not just any basketball game, but the game between my alma mater, the noble and virtuous University of North Carolina Tar Heels, and their rivals, the vile and loathsome Duke Blue Devils. Not that I'm prejudiced in any way. Just in case you haven't figured it out, my team lost by 2 points in overtime. The pain is real, my friends. But why? What is it about sports that can have such a profound effect on the human spirit? Why does a sporting event in which I'm not even a participant, in which I'm watching from hundreds of miles away, matter so much? And what does it tell us about human nature that we can be so intensely moved by what is, after all, just a game? I'm aware that some of you are sports fans and some of you are not, but I think there's something for all of us to learn from the phenomenon of sports fandom. My own connection to college basketball is part of my family heritage. As I've mentioned before, my mother had 5 brothers, all of whom went to college on basketball scholarships. 3 at Morehead State University in Kentucky, 1 at The Ohio State University, and 1 at Ohio University in Athens. So for my mother's family, and therefore for me, there's a deep connection between basketball and education, and from moving from working class to middle class. For our family, basketball was not just a game, but a way forward, a way of realizing the American dream of living in relative comfort and security. Also, my father played basketball in both high school and college, and for a brief time considered a career in coaching before he decided to pursue a call to ministry. And my mother was a cheerleader in high school and college as well. So there are some very real and very connections in my family's psyche to sports, especially college basketball, which became something very much like a religion for us. This family connection is definitely a big part of why I became a sports fan. In addition, as a young person, I played basketball and baseball and ran track. I never excelled the way my uncles did, but I was a fierce competitor who hated to lose. And that sense of athletic competition is something that still courses through my veins. Once you've played sports competitively and passionately, there's something about that experience that sticks with you and makes it easier, I think, to identify with sports and athletes later in life. And while I can no longer run up and down the court the way I used to, I still get a vicarious thrill when I watch others doing so. So part of what turns people into sports fans has to do with personal and familial connections. I come from a family whose story is intertwined in meaningful ways with basketball, and I myself played basketball, so the sport occupies a significant place in my life. And then there are more arbitrary factors that play a role in sports fandom. For example, if you were born and raised here in Pittsburgh, it would have been nearly impossible to escape either being a Steelers fan or being ostracized by family and friends for not being a Steelers fan. I don't think I can say anything that hasn't already been said about Steelers culture. It is so pervasive and all-encompassing that it is truly everywhere, not just here in Pittsburgh, but in the Steeler Nation diaspora around the world, wherever Steelers fans end up living. Much of that fandom is based on the arbitrary fact of where you happen to be born and raised, or where your family is from. Similarly, for myself, since I ended up going to college at the University of North Carolina, it was pretty much inevitable that I would become a Tar Heels fan. And the UNC sports culture is every bit as pervasive and all-encompassing as Steeler culture. When I lived in North Carolina, we would never schedule church events during the ACC tournament or during the Duke-UNC basketball game because we knew that very few people, if any, would show up for church events during those times. But aside from personal and familial connections and geographic factors, perhaps the primary reason that sports fandom is so pervasive has to do with the power of belonging. In a recent article on sports fandom in Psychology Today, psychologist Alan McConnell writes, "Social connectedness is a critical human need. And one way we establish it is through symbolic affiliations with others. The power of this need for connectedness is exhibited in many ways. For example, an entire soccer stadium in Liverpool singing 'You'll Never Walk Alone,' the team's unofficial theme song, reflects a crowd of football supporters exhibiting their shared identity by singing in unison, even though few probably know or care that the song is from a Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, and just associate singing this song with collectively supporting their club." McConnell continues, "Indeed, being in a collective experience with others who share a common passion is one of the greatest joys people can experience socially, whether it's attending a live concert, a political rally, or a major sporting event." As I've mentioned before, we're living in the midst of a crisis of belonging. There is a deep sense of distrust in many of the social and cultural institutions that have previously provided that larger sense of belonging, including local and national government, the church, traditional political parties, school systems, and other previously trusted institutions and organizations. Sports can help fill this vacuum and give people a sense of belonging, although even sports organizations themselves are these days somewhat suspect and distrusted. The downside of a sense of belonging based on sports fandom is that it is sometimes a cheap or dangerous sense of belonging. Emily Esfahani Smith, author of the book The Power of Meaning, writes, "Some groups and relationships deliver a cheap form of belonging. You're valued for what you believe, for who you hate, not for who you are. True belonging springs from love. It lives in moments among individuals, and it's a choice. You can choose to cultivate belonging with others." This deeper kind of belonging is often missing among sports fans. It's often missing, in fact, from churches, even though belonging is, in many ways, religion's reason for existence. So it is important for us as members of a religious community to consider whether our sense of belonging is the cheap form or if it is deeper. Is it based in loving community or is it based in hateful exclusion? And if it's not based in love, then we have some work to do. Going back to the sports metaphor, I do honestly find myself hating the other team sometimes, which is the dark side of being a sports fan. But for the most part, when I am at my best, what fuels my fandom is not so much hatred of the other, but rather a deep concern and sense of connection with the team, win or lose. This year, my beloved Tar Heels are struggling and will likely end up with a losing season. But that does not keep me from watching their games, as painful as some of them might be. A week before the Duke game, I put our UNC flag up over our front porch, and it will remain there for the rest of the season. Which brings me to the relationship between sports fandom and resilience, our theme for the month. Following a team for the long term, not being just a fair weather fan, but a die-hard win or lose fan, does give sports followers an opportunity to practice resilience. If you're a Steelers fan this year, you were given a great opportunity to practice building resilience, whether you wanted to be given that opportunity or not. Similarly, since I've moved to Pittsburgh, I've become a Pirates fan, which has been a constant exercise in practicing resilience. It's tempting sometimes to just stop watching. The baseball season, already a long path of 162 games over the course of 6 months, can seem much, much longer when the team is struggling. But at the end of the day, the players and the fans find a way to shake it off, get up the next day, and start again. Those of us who are fans of teams that have a long tradition of winning, like the North Carolina Tar Heels and the Pittsburgh Steelers, have been somewhat spoiled by near constant success and have developed the unhealthy attitude that nothing short of winning a national championship every year is acceptable. When in fact, loss is not necessarily a sign of weakness, but rather, in the long run, a way to build strength. Loss is not weakness, but fear of loss or intolerance for loss makes us weaker and less resilient. There is a healthy way of being a sports fan that can lead toward compassion for ourselves and others. I'd like to remind you of these words from American Zen Buddhist teacher Joan Halifax. All too often, our so-called strength comes from fear, not love. Instead of having a strong back, many of us have a defended front, shielding a weak spine. In other words, we walk around brittle and defensive, trying to conceal our lack of confidence. If we strengthen our backs, metaphorically speaking, and develop a spine that's flexible but sturdy, then we can risk having a front that's soft and open, representing choiceless compassion. Halifax says, the place in your body where these two meet, strong back and soft front, is the brave, tender ground in which to root our caring deeply. Sports, at their very best, can teach us how to have this strong back and soft front, how to feel empowered and connected while also being tender and open enough to let everything, every feeling, every challenge, every success, every disappointment in, and to be strengthened by all of it rather than defeated. The bottom line about sports fandom is that it can lead to a positive and empowering sense of connectedness, or an isolated sense of us versus them hatred. It can lead to a sense of resilience that helps us through hard times, or a sense of defeat and desolation that further tires and drags us down. It can lead to being in the game for the long run, or giving up in disgust each time loss is experienced. The choice is ours. As our congregation continues to change and grow, it is important for us to consider the kind of church community we aspire to be, to choose to base our thoughts and actions in love rather than in fear and hate, to choose to keep on showing up even when it appears that we might be losing a particular battle, to choose to be in the game for the long run even when it might be challenging for us. What I have learned from being a lifelong sports fan, and what I hope and pray all of us will learn from being members of this community, is that, in the words of Eileen Karpelis, loving and being loved is the only game in town. Those who risk much lose much, but they are also the only ones who ever win. May it be so. Amen. Please rise in body and in spirit and join in singing our hymn, Wake Now My Senses. We'll now give and receive our morning offering to support the work of this congregation.
Please join me in saying the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Would you please join me in thanking once again Danny Rechtenwald for the We'll close with these words. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts that they are, and renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown. Go in peace.
Am I meeting you outside?
Yeah, outside. 12:30, right? 12:30.
The driver's license. That's terrible.
Anyway, but it was like, it's funny, the alumni association. It's like, well, if you're going to come to school at UNC, well, so I mean, that was in the late 70s. They have connections. I mean, there's always connections. It's a very good school. Everyone in my long telling me about how much they love it. You know, but his class, of course, paid pretty heavily. The timing. Nice talking to you. You too.
You can't take me out.
Well, it's a basketball time. It is UNC colors. It is, absolutely, yeah. I did want to wear one that was like